Again, I was shocked when Rob Moreno said last week that you said that Fighting Nerds are going to go 0-2, and I was like, no, my goodness, this can't happen, right? And we got another Fighting Nerd in the main event next week.
But some of the numbers do surprise me for Diego Lopes because I personally thought, man, I'll probably be taking a bet on Diego Lopes.
Welcome to First Strike, only on VSiN, the sports betting network. Here's your hosts, Dave Ross and Rob Moreno.
We are back, First Strike, on a Monday. Dave Ross and Rob Moreno coming at you here. And what a weekend we had over in Paris, at Paris, and the fight night that we had. And El Modelo, Rob Moreno, as we like to say, for those starting to watch us here on First Strike now that we are back, they're going to have to know El Modelo because the model had a very big night. You nailed the main event. You nailed the co-main event. And it's hard enough to get winners. It's really hard when you're on two dogs the way the model was. And yet, Rob, it proved to be not only the right side, but in a pretty impressive way, I'd say, in the co-main event and the main event.
I will say I was very happy. I was a very happy camper Saturday afternoon as these fights were moving very fast. Obviously, we started the night with a loss. We got that Shauna Bannon loss out of the way. But like I said, it was nice rooting for the bigger underdog to start the morning. She looked slightly inexperienced. Her 2-3 years of MMA experience showed very quickly. But after that, man, the model got going. We hit that Umar C prop.
Huge.
That was great. And actually, shout out to, man, I'm forgetting their Twitter. I think it's Combat Sports Guys. I saw them tweet Friday. Umar C averages around 2.2 takedowns a fight. And there was a prop total takedowns over 1.5 minus 110. And I usually don't look for those because they're usually not available here in Vegas. Usually They don't get too crazy with props like that, especially down in the prelims. And I totally agreed with that. Knowing the numbers I knew from the model, I jumped all over that too. And he got those. He nailed everything perfectly. He got 2 takedowns and then got the TKO and everything wrote itself. But seeing BSD and Imavov cash in for us as dogs and have that 0-2 night from the Fight Nerds that I was scared to claim, but man, it came through.
And by the way, the Omar C fight, when you see Omar get those takedowns as you mentioned, what I was impressed with too is he looked to do damage. He looked to finish. He did not look to control. So luckily he didn't do it after the first one, so he can get that second takedown.
Yeah, I was nervous. I got nervous. I was like, oh, he's going to finish this right here. And then he let him up and took him down. I was like, oh, what a guy.
Thank you for waiting.
Thank you for waiting. He's my new favorite fighter.
But Rob, it was a really good night for the French, right? They go 5-0 on the card overall. And we talk about this a lot on First Strike in the first iteration, whether it's Lou Finicaro, Reed Kuhn. It's hard to model for those things, but we do see that when you have regional fights, right? Whether they're in Brazil with a majority of Brazilian fighters, whether it's going to be in England when they fight at the O2, I start to look to those things. And it's not to say that they're going to get a quote-unquote unfair advantage if the fights hit the cards. But what I sensed in the C fight is a good example of it, is these men and women are looking to finish. Mm-hmm. They're looking to put on a show in front of their countrymen and women. And I think that played out with the number of stoppages that we saw, only 2 fights going to the cards.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you have the main event that went all 5, which was great. It wasn't a slower main event, which was great. But you're right. That crowd was into every single fight not to take, because I love having fights here in the U.S., but, we're showing up at 4, 5, 6 fights into the prelim, right, ready to go for the main card, hopefully. They are rocking from bell to bell, and that was really cool to watch. So you're right. There could be some regional scenes where knowing that crowd is going to be behind them from 9 a.m. Well, not 9 a.m. for us, but from bell to bell. They're going to be in their seats, rocking, chanting, singing. And you got to have that. You feel a whole country behind you.
Yeah, you could feel it early on. And by the way, I did feel good about my under 4.5 at plus $1.50 until I didn't with all the finishes, right? And I'm going back and watching all these fights, and I'm seeing finish after finish. And then in that main event, which I was able, fortunately, to watch live here for us to catch up on the card a little bit, Nasruddin was so efficient and went to the body and hurt Caio. And I had said to you last week, I wanted Caio to fight, force him into a fight, into one he couldn't coast to a victory and use his athletic prowess, whether his ground game or not. And Nasruddin did that. But I got to give props to Kyle Ohio. He got beaten up in that fight and showed how tough he is, so that over does cash if you laid that price point here on that. But I'm okay to lose wagers like that because I had not seen Kyle get beaten up like that and yet survive for all 25 minutes.
Definitely. It was definitely very impressive from Imavov. He did what we said he needed to do, was almost kind of bully him in the cage and show him that he's not the bigger guy here. So very impressive from Imavov to go in there and just hand it.
And the model liked Imavov. That gets that plus money ticket to cash as well. You also really like Benoit Saint-Denis. And by the way, from a fan perspective, I was thrilled. I had no action on it because I was too nervy about going up against Mauricio Hufi in this spot. But Rob, you nailed it again on that price point here. Really nice price point on Benoit Saint-Denis. And you could feel the emotion in that crowd backing their guy, BSD. And I am curious your thoughts after watching it. Are you not, we're happy because the model side cashes the ticket, but are you more surprised the way that Hufi looked unprepared, or more improved that Benoit Saint-Denis looked like that art of war guy that we really started to like, certainly in a betting market and as a fan favorite?
I think a little bit of both. I was very surprised that it finished in the first round, right?
Yeah.
It was quick. Like, we saw Benoit Saint-Denis implement his grappling immediately, which was something we talked about. Like, hey, if we get 2 rounds of grappling, BSD can most likely get a win here. But man, he took it to him immediately. And Hufi looked completely unprepared. He looked completely like, oh, I can't keep myself up now, and I can't just outstrike this guy. This guy's in my face, grabbing me at the hips and pulling me down. And boom, he got the submission. That fight ended much quicker than I thought, but I was very happy to get that victory, because obviously the last thing I want is, you get a situation where we're in the 3rd round and I'm still hoping that Hufi doesn't just spin heel kick him in the head.
Right. And that's the thing when you have a younger fighter like Hufi in there, you worry about if BSD can keep that volume going and that pace going. But he did get that sub. It was in round 2, so I'll give Hufi credit for getting out of that first. But still, the point remains that BSD clearly was the more physical fighter. And when he got him down, he didn't even get it underneath the neck, but he had done enough damage to Hufi to make him tap. So again, a really rough night for the fighting nerds here, 0-2 in the co-main and the main. And how about Modestas Bukauskas? We don't think of him, some people don't, as a knockout guy, but my guy Paul Craig, and I love Modestas, a personal affinity for the guy too, but knocked out the lights of Paul Craig in the first round. Then we saw Paul Craig finally put those gloves in the octagon and say, that's it. You guys have seen me fight in the octagon for the last time. What a great career for Paul Craig, but really this was a case of a younger fighter now in the Baltic Warrior that looks like he's starting to gain his ground in this division.
100%. It was sad to see your guy, Paul Craig, take that loss the way it happened. It happened much quicker. Like I said, and something for people who are new to the model and Modelo, I do track the lower scoring fights. The fights I stay away from, I still track them in the model because I need those losses to teach me what the model doesn't like. And Paul Craig, while it scored in his favor, it was so small. It was such a small grade for him that it wasn't worth me taking a shot.
Right.
And it was a right stay away spot. But when I saw him take off the gloves, I was like, you know what, it makes sense. It is kind of like you said, you're realizing Father Time is undefeated, and maybe it's time for me to stop getting punched in the face by these younger, stronger guys.
Yeah, and again, some of his wins that Paul Craig has had will be legendary wins, right? So we see those, like whether it's Jamal Hill, and certainly when you're looking at the champion in a former division. That's Paul Craig fought the best that there was at the time, but I think the time has come. I'll never tell fighters when to retire because I love watching them fight, but I was glad to see Paul Craig go out the way he did. So as we wrap that one up before we look ahead to this week, what is your biggest takeaway from the model? Obviously getting 2 big cashes with 2 big dogs in the co-main in the main event.
It gave me a little more confidence to bet underdogs from the model. There was a couple rocky spots throughout the year so far where too many underdogs pop up and I get hesitant, and a lot of them end up losing. But as we know, favorites generally are winning in the UFC this year. But it gave me a little confidence that, it just kind of reassures that we're on the right track with this model. And we just got to keep finding those spots, find ways to make those prices better for us. It's not as dog heavy this week, but we'll find some spots.
All right, well, that gets us to this week. And again, I was shocked when Rob Moreno said last week, as we brought back our famed show, that you said that Fighting Nerds are going to go 0-2. And I was like, no, my goodness, this can't happen, right? And we got another Fighting Nerd in the main event next week. And again, here we go again, but this is going to be Brazil against Brazil with Gene Silva. Silva is a massive favorite here against Diego Lopes. Now, you do not have to give out an official pick until Friday's show when we come back here in the program on First Strike and break it down even further. Totals have not populated yet, but what we like to do, Rob, here on First Strike is give a cursory look to the fight numbers that we have now and see if they might be playable. My first blush is, man, I look at Diego Lopes at plus 210, and I got to think he's live here. Is Gene Silva just that wrecking crew, and he's going to stand right in front of Diego Lopes and get him out of there? Because I think Diego, with the wrestling and with his improved striking, he's got, I think, more ways to win the fight.
I was equally as shocked when I saw the number. If anything, disappointed that I was hoping for a much closer line here. And like you said, not giving an official pick yet. We'll wait until Friday. But some of the numbers do surprise me for Diego Lopes because I personally thought, man, I'll probably be taking a bet on Diego Lopes. Now I do like the bigger price on him if we're going that way. But some of his numbers kind of stand out. You know, he does have a small 3-inch reach advantage in the reach, but his XR percentage, again, I'm hammering this in. He is below 50% XR percentage, which I was surprised because he's only lost 2 fights in the UFC.
Right.
Which means he's either finding ways to win by finish. I mean, he does have 3 finishes in the UFC, or he's just finding ways to win tough wars. Now, is this one of those wars? We'll see, because Gene Silva, 5-0 in the UFC, he has a 76% XR percentage.
Whoa.
So he's not just finding ways to win, he is winning these fights, hands down. Also has 5 finishes, so that's 5-5. Now, obviously, we will give a slight strength of schedule to Diego Lopes. I mean, he's fought some of the best. Brian Ortega, he just came off a fighting Volk, so that's a huge marker, and that sure has to be accounted for in the numbers. Is that Volk probably takes some of those numbers down for Diego, but all the way down to 48% XR percentage is a concern. It's a concern that if he's in there with a guy like Gene Silva for 5 rounds, is he going to find spots? And you mentioned the wrestling and grappling. Surprisingly, because I have that same thought in my head that Diego is a grappler, that he's able to grab guys. He only has 2 takedowns in the UFC. Wow. Gene Silva, only 1. So I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of that. Now, obviously, we have control time in the cage, pressing up against the cage. That's where Diego might have some shine. He has a 40% control rate. Obviously, when we're talking about guys like Umar Sy, who is 99% control, very different. But a 40% versus Gene Silva's 16%, because Gene's going to try to stay long. And here, as I mentioned, Diego has a reach advantage. So can he use that to just change the narrative of Gene Silva keeping that distance away from him? Diego Lopes, unfortunately, does have less striking output. He strikes at 3.94 significant strikes per minute with a negative 0.88 differential, meaning he's getting hit with 4.8 significant shots per minute. Not good. Gene Silva, 4.47 significant strikes landed per minute with a positive 0.60 differential. So if we're telling a story where this fight's going to stay standing because these guys only have 3 takedowns between the two of them, there's a little bit of time around the cage. But if we're telling a story where they're standing and just trading shots, I think Gene Silva lands more shots, the cleaner shots, potentially the harder shots. I mean, he's got 4 knockouts in the UFC. So right now, I mean, I don't want a minus 258. But right now, unless I find another narrative here, I think I'm giving the Fight Nerds a win this weekend.
Wow, and I'll tell you this, I can't wait to see where those round props populate later on in the week, because to what you just said with the numbers that El Modelo is showing, to me that says if it's going to be a stand-up fight, I can go back to Lopez's inauguration in the UFC with the Evlev fight, where he did have a chance to take him down and look for a submission because he was losing the fight. So the IQ was there to look for a submission. Doesn't utilize that enough in my estimation. So if he stands and trades with Gene Silva, to your point here, Rob, I might look to an under round prop here and say if they're going to fight fire with fire, and that's probably not what you want to do with Gene Silva, somebody might get knocked out. So I'll be very curious to see where that populates, if it's 2.5 or 3.5. So we'll look at those numbers later on in the week. Very quickly, some other fights on this card. You got Kelvin Gastelum's back in there. He's a big favorite against Dustin Stoltzfus.
I'm staying away from him.
Okay, you're staying away there?
If anyone wants a preview, I am staying away from Kelvin Gastelum.
At 265 is what I'm seeing here on a Monday, a massive favorite. Flash Gordon's back in there. He's a big favorite. So we're seeing a lot of big numbers here, around 250, 275. Gordon over Rafa Garcia. And even Rob Font is a $1.50 betting favorite against David Martinez. Any numbers that stand out to you here in the main card here on a Monday, or is it going to be a wait-and-see approach for how they get molded throughout the week?
I think the main card might be a wait-and-see to see how they get molded. I will say, if you are leaning, like you said, you pointed out, there's a couple bigger favorites here. If you are leaning Gene Silva, maybe not in the main card, maybe in the prelims, but that number most likely will grow, because as we saw, the fight nerds, we just have this mindset around the fight nerds. I think that number is going to grow. So if you're thinking parlay potential for Gene Silva on just the money line, that's something to jump on early. Who you pair him up with, that's up to you, because there's a lot of crazy money lines going on, especially in the prelims as well. I know you didn't mention it, but Tatiana Suarez is on the which is crazy. She just fought for the title, and I get it. She got destroyed, but we're just dropping her down to the prelims.
I mean, why is Suarez and Amanda Lemos on the prelims? Are you kidding me with that fight card? I mean, it's a good fight card. That's the point. But the fact that I thought Tatiana was the next until she wasn't, and now Lemos is somebody that's always in there against bangers, fighting for titles, fighting the best in the world, and she's over a $3 betting underdog against Tatiana. Very interesting, but you know what's coming. If you're back in the Lemos side, you better say, how is she going to avoid the takedowns from Tatiana Suarez? That's the hard part there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be excited to talk numbers for that on Friday for Suarez Lemos, because you're right. I hate minus 425, but I understand why. I think we all thought she was the future until she wasn't. But maybe she still can be. But man, Lemos is in every fight she's in. She's in it. I mean, she's proved me wrong quite a couple times in the model. Man, plus 330 is going to be interesting as that goes to the week, because usually what I look at on a Monday, numbers usually go the same way I'm leaning by Friday. So that's why I usually jump on numbers early. And I think, I learned that from Lou. I mean, he bets things weeks in advance, which I'm like, props to you. I'm trying to keep up with all the fight cards. So props to Gam Lou. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where that number goes. Because, man, if Lemos can stay up, that's a nice price tag.
If you can keep the fight standing, as we've seen, that's where the problem is going to be for Tatiana Suarez, because we know how tough Amanda Lemos is. But if the fight gets down on her back, that's not where she wants to be against a bigger woman in Tatiana. So, again, she's a 425 betting favorite right now. Rob, can't wait, man. The motto was in full effect. Great calls by you last week, cashing dogs in both the co-main and the main event. And the Fighting Nerds did, in fact, go 0-2. Will they go 0-3 potentially in that main event with Gene Silva, the big favorite, over Diego Lopes? We'll be back on Friday. Do we know yet? Is it a surprise guest for Friday yet, Rob? Or are we gonna? We'll tell the people later on in the week.
We'll leave it a surprise guest, and we'll tell people later in the week.
That's what we call a tease in the business, people. All right, so for Rob Moreno, I am Dave Ross. We'll see you Friday right back here. It's First Strike on VSiN.